Welcome, viewers and listeners, and thank you for joining us here again on the Level Set here on Mix 99.5 FM, the heart and soul of St. Louis. I'm joined by Larry Fields, attorney extraordinaire. Dr. Charles Alexander is with me from Chicago, Illinois. And let's jump right into our topics for the day. Fast approaching, Dr. Alexander, is Juneteenth, a holiday that I know that you like to delve a little bit deeper into than the average Joe might. As sometimes we linger around the surface and the cosmetics of what that holiday was supposed to represent and how it came into being. So I'm going to come to you first as we approach the day and ask you to share some of your insights relative to that holiday with our viewers and listeners.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm not necessarily a fan of it as a national holiday. I think this was, another one of those kind of low-hanging fruit types of things, that we end up with instead of systemic change. But the main reason is because what we're saying we're celebrating is not true.
Elaborate.
And so we had two other emancipations subsequent to Juneteenth. So Juneteenth was June 19th of 65. Delaware, this person who made the state of the person who just made this thing a national holiday, Delaware still had slaves. They didn't emancipate until December 6th. And so perhaps this person didn't know, and I know most people don't, but I would think that he would know, given the importance that he placed on the date, and that he would know that his own state was actually the last state to emancipate enslaved Africans. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, even after that, for another 6 months, there was slavery in the continental U.S. The civilized tribes held slaves until June 14th, 1866, till June 14th. So a whole nother year. And so I know, because again, most folks don't know this anyway, but now there's really, this holiday kind of makes it hard for folks to know it. Because now again, we have this, this state-sanctioned misinformation.
Right.
And so, these are the things that we're steadily fighting and having, to be up against. And these are the ways, or these are the reasons why, a major contributing factor to how we end up duped.
And the target is easy to hit in terms of, I don't know if I would say duping us, but misinforming us. And I use misinforming for those who are well-intentioned but just don't know. Duping I would use for those who know and they're just telling me not the truth.
So yeah,
but we're well positioned to receive all that. Yeah, we're well positioned to receive all that because we are always eager to be acknowledged fully in terms of our own personal history. So if you don't know that, then you're more ready to embrace that as a holiday and as something to be celebrated and as, those kinds of things. And I know Mike Jones, if he was with us this evening, he's also pointed out, I believe, something relative to Missouri, and that date is not in alignment either. I can't remember exactly what the issue is, but I know he's pointed it out. And so it's important that we do know the actual facts of our history, especially now when there's a concerted effort to suppress facts around our history and really outlaw facts around our history from being presented to our children and to our communities. And that's also deeply problematic. And of course, we will find any number of ingenious ways to defeat that effort going forward.
Well, one of the things with the state of Missouri is that General Fremont emancipated the enslaved Africans in Missouri prior to Lincoln issuing the Emancipation Proclamation. Lincoln then had him rescinded because he did not want to upset the border states. So he didn't want to upset Missouri. He didn't want to upset Delaware. He didn't want to upset, what is it, Kentucky? And what's the other border state? It's 4 border states, right?
Arkansas?
No, I don't think it's Arkansas, but whatever it is.
Don't make me do geography, man. Shit.
I usually have it on the tip of my tongue. I don't know why
Tennessee?
I'm getting it right now.
No. Wait, Memphis is 5 hours away, but Tennessee is not a border state. Yeah, don't make me do geography. We had the young students laughing at me on
So Delaware,
on there.
Maryland, Kentucky. So Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri. Those are the border states. And so
no, I thought you meant the states that border Missouri. I'm sorry.
No, I meant the 4 border states. No, you were right in terms of what borders Missouri.
Okay.
Yes. And so he had it, he had Fremont rescind the order. Now I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how you re-enslave some folks.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I haven't really done the research to see what that actually looked like.
Yeah.
But again,
and certainly it's not taught in schools that Lincoln issued a directive to rescind an emancipation order that had been issued freeing human beings in Missouri. He said, no, put them back in the chains because we can't tick these other folks off.
And so, certainly is available, as all of this information is, but is not a part of anybody's curriculum, right?
Yeah.
And, and that's problematic. And so again, where the duping does occur is that I don't know, because I didn't, I wasn't walking around Walmart looking at what Walmart was selling, but
they had the ice cream, bro. I know where you're going with it.
If social media is to be trusted on this, Walmart was, one of those major big box places who is going, who was seeking to benefit, and, financially, from the holiday. And so, many of these things get monetized in a way that are not, are really kind of to our detriment. And so, so we have to know these types of things. We have to be aware of these types of things. And, when people hear this show, they need to share this information and, let it be known. Some people will be like, it doesn't matter, but it absolutely does. It matters if you are a descendant of one of those folks who were still enslaved after the period of time that everybody is telling you that slavery was ended in the United States, because it is patently false and disrespectful.
And Larry, Dr. Alexander points something out relative to the commercialization of our history and the monetization of it. When Walmart starts selling the Juneteenth ice cream, we've seen other efforts to do commercializing and leveraging of significant pieces of our history. You can get every quote that Dr. King, or at least every quote unquote acceptable quote that Dr. King ever made on a t-shirt and find it also weaponized against you as we continue to fight for our liberty and freedom. What about Dr. King? What would he do, et cetera? Weigh in with some of your thoughts on why that persists in this country, man, with the capitalism being a major driver of it for sure. But what the hell with these people selectively taking pieces of our history to either weaponize against us, leverage against us, or commercialize and monetize?
Well, first of all, good evening, brothers. And second of all, and actually, 1A, free Brittany Griner. We need to bring our sister home.
Yeah.
I'm sick of this. Had that been
thank you for
Diana
that.
Taurasi, we would have sent over special ops by now. We've got to do better. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Second of all, with respect to the topic, Mike Jones says, if he was here, he would probably chime in states. And I'm tired of quoting Mike Jones. This is the last time I'm doing it for free. When white folks give you something you ain't asked for, it ought to pique your interest. Why? But I can answer that question too. This is a very old trick. The Roman Empire mastered this. That's why you see so many different adaptations of other cultures and religions and so forth in Roman Catholicism. What you do when you conquer a people, so you do not, so you can limit the rebellions and so you can limit the infighting, is you adopt portions of their culture, portions that won't harm you, but you absorb those into them so you can get what what folks will believe or tend to side with some sort of integration. And that's what's happened here. And you mentioned King. It's funny that you mentioned King because that is a perfect example. If in fact we can adopt King in the mainstream, into our main political or societal body, because it's not politics that they want to mainstream King with. But if we can integrate King and pass him off in a form that's to the benefit of the status quo, we would have won. And that's what this animal, this monster, this media that they have has done. And Juneteenth is just another example of that. They've incorporated that. And when you incorporate it, it comes with a number of things. It comes with cooperation. It comes with the economic benefit. It comes with the psychic income that these individuals have. Until we understand that, Marvin Gaye was 100% right. Do not believe anything that you hear coming from these folks because you've been so miseducated that you are baseless. There is no foundation for you. And believe only half of what you see. That's what we have got to incorporate. This is, you are, the only way out of this jam that we're in America, from, as far as I'm concerned, and I know I'm going to get some pushback, but the only way out of this is spiritually and knowledge-based. Period. We do not know who we are. We don't have a spiritual basis for who we are. And until we figure that out and do the things that are uncomfortable, we're going to be, and strategic. We're going to have some the same results that we've been getting. We're going to, continue to die at an alarming rate from hypertension, from diabetes. Most political thing we're going to do today is eat, and we just accept what they say, stock and barrel. We haven't even taken the time to identify what genetically is best for us in many cases. This whole notion that we have, man, in this monster, this colonialist that we're in, it just has to be torn down for us, and we have to construct something that is us. How do we do that? There are a number of different ways. I'm sure I don't have all the answers, but Juneteenth is a glaring example of how our, I won't even call it culture, but how our experience is appropriated, is gaslit to turn against us. So just think about this. You are celebrating with the descendants that enslaved your ancestors the freedom that you achieved. So you're basically on the plantation, dancing with the kids of the slave owners that owned your family and celebrating it. I mean, there's no way. Absolutely no way. This is one of those time periods where we need to circle the wagons. And if we're going to take the time off, collectively take the time off to strategize on what will free us and our children.
Right.
I heard a gentleman say today, one of the most profound things. I mean, it was profound in a sense. It wasn't 100% true. But, you know, here we are. We are calling ourselves the parents of a lost generation. And the fact of the matter is that no object ever loses itself. If your car keys come up lost, they didn't lose themselves. They didn't walk away. You lost. And so and the reason why we're producing that is because we are failing to take responsibility of our task. And we have to do that. We got to have a tough, hard conversations and make those sacrifices.
And we're going to circle back to that because we're going to talk a little bit about Father's Day later in the show, which is coming up. But man, that's a very, very interesting breakdown that both of you brothers provided for Juneteenth. And the part that really leaps out at me from your analysis, Larry, is the idea that there has to be some approach, in your case, spiritual and knowledge-based, but some approach to securing our future, our position now and our future going forward. I would argue too that intellectually, and here, it goes to the cost-benefit analysis, but an intelligent people in our condition and under our circumstances, really, this calls for something even more serious than that to me. Is it feasible? Is it reasonable to take up arms and really, you know, go hard like what we saw our opposites do on January 6th, which we're going to talk about that January 6th committee and what they have presented and disclosed. But under the circumstances, man, just James Baldwin's point, to be aware in this society and be Black is to be in a constant state of rage. And that's not without basis. That's not without basis and without reason.
It is a constant state too. And when I say constant, I mean constant. Because there's so many people that have been curated by this system. They do a better job in our community. They do a better job of exercising the will of the community than white folks.
And that's a whole show, man. That's a whole show. And I don't hold myself out. And you know me, Larry, you've known me all my life, man. I don't hold myself out as extraordinary in terms of courage or ability. But I'll be damned, man. Some of the people that we've encountered in our adult lives and the roles that we've seen them play in undermining the community that produced them is just remarkable to me, man. To know that we all have come up so differently, that you could land in a place psychologically, emotionally, and literally physically, where you would, you know, shuffle and buck dance and you know, go along and get along to the direct disadvantage of the community that produced you to enrich yourself. That entrepreneurial politics. That's a hell of a thing to observe. But I did want to get to that January 6th committee, man, because that is part of the circumstance writ large that is in front of us, man. There was an actual coup attempt on the democratic experiment. It was organized. You had people at the highest level up to and including Donald Trump, who has been an open criminal for most of his adult life, if not all of his adult life, and gone unpunished, which only emboldens him and his followers as they see that their open criminality is either unpunished or lightly punished. And this committee has exposed so much, man, in terms of the intentionality and the intentional efforts to create an environment in which the will of the people was going to be overturned, you know, by an armed mob of many white supremacists and their sympathizers. And so it's been fascinating to watch and know that the Department of Justice ostensibly is investigating these crimes and at some point may hold someone lightly accountable versus what ought to be the case right now. There should be some arrests being made as we speak, man. With the evidence that's already been presented, crimes could be charged legitimately. John Eastman, the attorney who catered to Donald Trump's desire to create and fabricate narratives and fictions that would allow him to incite people across the country with the lies that he told about the election and otherwise. John Eastman diligently looking for ways to assist him in that and being told by multiple legal professionals that what you're doing is illegal, is against the law, and you probably, going forward are going to need an attorney yourself. And he persisted, man, up to and including the point that during the day, while they're in the Capitol, killing law enforcement officers and injuring and maiming them, going after the vice president, he still, even in that space, in real time, was pushing Vice President Pence and his people to, hey, man, here's another little trick you should try to throw this election our way. Just committing crime on top of crimes, and here we are. So I don't know if you brothers have been watching those committee hearings, but if you have, go ahead and weigh in. I'd like to get your all's thoughts on them as well.
I have not. Have not watched. I'm just gonna wait and see how it plays out.
Hey, Doc, when I tell you it's blatant, man. When I tell you the spirit, hey, they got this congressman on tape and the lies, man, the openly lying when you know you're going to be exposed for lying. They got videotape of a congressman who was taking insurrectionists on a quote unquote tour the day prior to the attack on the Capitol. One of the participants is with this congressman taking pictures, logistics, and strategizing around exits, the tunnels under the Capitol that lead to the chambers where the Congress is going to be convened, and all of this. He denied it initially, never happened. There were no tours. This is an attack. I'm going to sue somebody for defamation, etc. And nobody was in there with, with me or anybody else. Then they produced a videotape for his ass and say, is this you showing these people these exits and tunnels? And well, it was just an innocent, just changing, a fluidly changing story as the lie unfolds in front of him. And he's yet to be called on the damn carpet, man. It's really, when you put all of the pieces together as they have and fairly effectively, you can see that this was highly orchestrated. This was in no way a random, sudden escalation because tempers were already flaring because they were mad about a quote unquote stolen election, which was a damn lie from the start. No, this was highly orchestrated. They had people at the Capitol ready to break into the buildings, which they had laid out on maps in the days prior, all the buildings that they wanted to hit. Before Trump even gave his speech on the mall that morning, the teams had already been assembled, waiting for the crowd that he was going to incite to join them, so that once they rushed, they would have people behind them coming in, and it's just a whole series of crimes against the Constitution, crimes against the people that have to be punished. Otherwise, we are moving rapidly toward chaos, which was my point when I was listening to Larry. When I think of what we know factually in terms of the environment we're living in currently and what we would need to be prepared to do, an intelligent person is going to be prepared to move toward an armed defense of our families and our communities, because, this is what people seem to be begging for on the other side. And we'd be unwise not to be prepared for that eventuality.
Reddit, you've heard, and you have also, Dr. Alexander. What is the law? Mm-hmm. What is the law?
See, right now,
the law is what we say it is.
Yeah, it's whatever anybody is saying.
You've heard it from police officers,
right?
You've heard it from politicians. You've seen it from corporations and individual billionaires. The law is what we say it is.
Hey, and it only
An
applies
example,
to some of us.
and this is an example of a group of individuals that are saying that damn that the law is what we say it is.
Exactly right.
And we're reminded on this show all the time by a guy that's not here tonight, and I'm not going to give him any more credit, that slavery and Jim Crow were legal.
Right.
So
Right.
if in fact we can make slavery legal, we can make overturning elections illegal. We can legal. We can make overturning elections legal. We can make our total dominion over a woman's body legal. In fact, she'll help us. We can make we can overturn tried and true precedents because that's what we do. So none of this is, what we have kind of come to grips with is the fact that, we're sitting around here, bemoaning the fact that affirmative action is over. But any semblance or any veneer of a democracy is over. And that died during, a long time ago, but it's been bolstered here in recent periods. And we continue
right now.
We continue to try and act like this is a live thing. But democracy, we've known in a number of our communities that democracy has been dead for a long time, and we won't exercise our significant share to even leverage that to the extent that we should. And once again, that's part and parcel as well of a number of things that have been weaponized against our community. But, we've got to be smarter than that. But I mean, this whole notion that this is, that this is the greatest country in the world anymore, and that we're a superpower, we are the superpower, when in fact there was a convention of the Americas this past week, and the Prime Minister of Barbados laid out the case of great countries and what they've done and what these so-called superpowers have done to marginalized countries and to marginalized people. And the bottom line is, it's a new day, baby. It's a brand new day.
Yeah. And when you look at, for example, Jenny Thomas, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, and her open involvement in building strategy and calling for the execution of the plans to overturn an election in the United States of America. And then he provides some level of cover for her, voting against, the vehicle that would have allowed for her actions to be investigated on the surface. The open criminality of people in seats of power is what is accelerating us toward the kind of environment that we've been describing, man, over time, where it's really, you just really need to be ready to defend your own, man, because the law is what certain folks say it is. And then those people who would ostensibly represent the interests of the majority, that 80 plus million that voted for Joe Biden, have performed so weak so many times. Is part of the reason we've landed here, is when you don't respond in kind to people who are saying, to hell with the law and the rules and the customs. We're going to do what we need to do to seat ourselves in power permanently, and you can kiss our ass. If you don't respond to that with whatever you have available to you, be that ending the filibuster, be that expanding the Supreme Court, then you're not serious about the preservation of what you've called a representative democracy over time. You couldn't be, because you see what they told you what's coming, and they're going to give you some more of it. Only this time they're going to give you enough to finish the job. So, hey man, Larry, you brought something up before the show that I want to jump to. One of your favorite artists' birthday. I wanted you to speak on that for our listeners and viewers, man. Weigh in on Mr. Tupac Shakur.
Well, the way you activate your hips and push your Got a brother wanting this so bad, I'm about to pass out, want to dig you, and I can't even lie about it.
Hey,
Baby,
man.
alleviate your clothes. Time to fly about it, catch me at a club. Girl, you got me fiending, talking to me, and I can't comprehend the
The
meaning.
meaning.
Now, if you want to roll with me, then here's your chance. Doing 80, and his most, to me, his most profound song was one that never got much airplay, and that was Young Black Male. I bustle and fussle and I cuff. And I mean, you know, just profound. This was one of the most well-read, insightful individuals. Are you saying something, Dr. Alexander?
I am not.
Okay, insightful young man, but he was conflicted. You know, born in blackness, born steeped in black revolutionary teachings and concerning, but still caught up. A very just a typical Gemini. Got caught up in high intellect, but at the same time had this unabashing tendency to be swayed by the pull of things that were just antithetical to who he was. And I'm not talking about the rape because that was never fully litigated on the appeal. And I've read varying accounts of what happened that night. And I think had that been a fair jury, that he should have been acquitted. But I'm going to leave that aside. But just the revolutionary mindset and his love for the people, just an undying love for the people, is something that is, just solidly missed. He would have been 51 today. He died at 25, and 26 years ago, and he still has, I still can look at the arc of his life and become emotional because he represents so many individuals that will never get the full breadth of the attention that he rightfully deserves it, but they deserve it as well.
Larry, let me ask you this, man, because you can't escape, to me, this thing that follows when we lose somebody like that so early. What would you imagine would have been his contribution had he lived, man? What were his possibilities?
I think that he would have gone full force into entertainment and used his bully pit to create three-dimensional characters in film. I think he would have been a prolific writer. I think he would have been a voice. I don't see him in politics because that game is more wicked than a lot of these street games. And you would have. I don't think he could have been who he wanted to be. But I think entertainment would have been the vessel. And I think that he would have had his own production company by now. He would have produced some very, very moving movies. And I think he would have been against the grain. I think some of the things that have been widely accepted by Hollywood, he wouldn't have accepted as widely. And I think that there are a number of babies that would have been affected differently by his influence. And, things would certainly, I think a part of a movement died when he died.
Yeah. And I look at the direction of entertainment today and you just wonder what influence he would have had in terms of what followed him, right? Same thing with Biggie, I guess. And I don't necessarily hold those out as they were the same era, but they were certainly two distinct talents, right? So, Dr. Alexander, did you have any thoughts on that issue before we transition to our? Go ahead.
Just a question. So you don't think that he has influence? You don't think his influence lives on?
I do. I think it lives on.
Question.
I just wonder, would it have been greater had he lived?
Well, his influence would have needed to change.
Mm-hmm. Elaborate.
Well, I think he gets a pass on the misogyny, period.
Okay.
And nobody made him do that. That was his choice. And so he opted for that. And I think people engage in a bunch of revisionist history in terms of he was doing that to capture. He ain't have to capture. He started off, reasonably high. And so he should have stayed in that space if that's the space that he was in. But but I do think that his influence, is prevalent, and I think his influence is prevalent, particularly for our later conversation about Father's Day. So I'll wait for that, but I could. Well, I'll add to it when we get there, but I can't begin to tell you the number of young men that I have come in contact with who are anti-dad and attribute their anti-dad to Tupac lyrics.
Wow. Now that's fascinating to me, man.
Yeah,
I thought you were going to say.
Let's have a discussion on that. What lyrics?
Yeah. I thought you were going to say attributed to their lived experience because, we have had something of a crisis in some parts of our community relative
when
to
you mean they're anti their
relationships
fathers
between
or
fathers.
they're anti being dads to their children?
Anti to their fathers. I know at least two people, and these are adults. I know at least two adults who have created false narratives consistent, consistent with this, whatever he says in Dear Mama about his daddy, consistent with that, and again, these are people who profess that their ideology is at least informed,
right,
by his lyrics, and so.
But Dr. Alexander,
and
let
those
me ask you this. Let me ask you a question because I would imagine, and especially by the time you reach adult life, man, I would imagine that Tupac could not unilaterally or independent of any part of their lived experience with their own fathers in terms of their father's absence.
I'm not refuting any of that. I'm saying to you that he gets a pass on
the misogyny,
on a bunch of the stuff he says. I mean, so we speak about his mom being a Panther and his stepfather being Matula Shakur,
right?
But much of what we say relative to his commercial music is anti-Black.
Well, and that is really the I guess I mentioned he was conflicted in the and a complicated guy, but I think that's the tragedy of him dying so young. I know at 25, there versus 35, there are a number of things that I would do differently, and that is why I feel robbed, because we did not see how he was going to turn out. And I mean, if things change.
Yeah.
I mean, he never had an opportunity to develop and grow to understand how detrimental some of those things are. I mean, I would not, sit here and lie. That, hit 'em up, song where he talks, where he and Biggie are going back and forth. That was, I don't think there's ever been prior to that record being made. I don't think there was ever a record made like that. And for those of you all that have never heard it, it is, really a battle song against, Biggie for what he thought was an individual. Well, at the time, he was under the understanding or under the mindset that Biggie had something to do with him being shot and robbed. So, I mean, no one can refute what you're saying, Dr. Alexander, but at the same time, there was a basis, particularly that first tape. It wasn't even a CD. First tape he had was revolutionary.
Here, Larry, let me jump in there too, because that therein lies the frustration. Like you said, you can't refute what Dr. Alexander has set forth, but people do evolve. There's a such thing as maturing. There's a such thing as learning. There's a such thing as expanding. And sometimes you can look at a trajectory, right, of a person and anticipate, because of the foundation, what that trajectory might look like. And this is something I've said over and over again. I think the media is one of the surest vehicles that we have available to us to shape thinking in our society, in our community, the mass media, the messaging. And so if one like Tupac could have evolved and would have evolved to a space where he was not producing that kind of music versus something that was more about the lift of the community, the enrichment of the community, the education of the community, the defense of the community, might his talent have taken a turn in that direction? And could he have been reached by others in that space, especially with the events as they unfolded? What would he have thought about a Mike Brown or a George Floyd? How would he have responded in a situation like that in terms of the message that he moved to the people in the aftermath of something like that? We can go on and speculate, but all we have is what we have, man. And that fatherhood issue, I think about Shaquille O'Neal when he briefly delved into the rap game.
My father.
And made it, my biological didn't bother.
Right. Phil is my father.
Yeah. And so many of our brothers, man, have had that experience where, dad wasn't fully present in the best ways that fathers can be present for their children for any number of reasons. And it leaves broken young men, man, who are in many respects responsible for putting themselves together. And usually with the help of some other positive influences, we've seen that done. Mentors, people who take an interest. I know that both of you brothers have such a sense of community that you probably had the same experience I've had. I used to work inside the schools a lot, man. We had an organization I had put together with this young brother who's a former gang member, former prisoner, me being a former law enforcement officer. We were working together, but all you got to do is walk into a school and you automatically, I guarantee you, both of you, feel responsible for every kid you see in there. It's black school, you walk in there, you already feel parental in some respects to every child. If you see a kid in the hall or, you just see any situation, you already feel a parental vibe in many respects and a responsibility that, I'm here now, whatever I'm giving you is going to be positive, and I'm going to check in with you to see what's happening with you too.
Just would like to reiterate that I preface my statement with he would have needed to change.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
I did not. I'm not saying he wasn't going to change.
Mm-hmm.
I am saying that the change was necessary.
Right.
And I agree that he, was plausibly conflicted, but it wasn't because he didn't know, because it can't be both. And so he knew fully well it's just impossible. Now, he certainly could have been conflicted, but it wasn't because he didn't know,
Yeah.
and it wasn't simply because he was immature.
Right.
Because we can't, on one hand, speak to his mom and his stepfather and who they are and how well read he is or was, and he not know. So he chose to ride, with who we rode with, both literally and figuratively. And so those were decisions. And so but it only matters to me because I'm just not sure that we're very well rounded. I'm not sure that the conversation about him is. I'm not sure that most times that there's talk about Tupac that it is a well-rounded discussion.
Yeah. You think all the ground is not covered generally when it comes to it?
That would be my general assessment of what I've heard.
Yeah.
From many quarters. But
Right.
that just is what it is.
Okay. Well,
I think that's a fair assessment, but I also understand why he was riding with death row. They were the only ones that reached out to him to get him out of jail, and put a lawyer in his camp to try and defend him against those charges those rape charges that are what they were. And this man, So I understand that, and when he died, he was attempting to get away from that. So yeah, I would have liked to have seen him change, but unfortunately, he won't.
Right. Brothers, we got a little time left, man. I don't want to miss this opportunity to talk a little bit about Father's Day as it approaches just a couple of days away now, 2 or 3 days away. And, we can reflect on our experiences as fathers, experiences we had with our fathers, who were our first, in many cases, role models in terms of what a man is, what a father is, and the awesome responsibility of being a father, man. It is just, there is no guidebook for it. There's no playbook for it. You start a family and you take on that role. And it has been the journey of a lifetime for me, man. I've had, man, mixed experiences in that space, man. I've got a daughter that lives in Phoenix. Her name is Elizabeth, man. But she, and that's probably a show to do itself, man. We did not. She grew up apart from me, right? Me and her mother weren't not together, and I am still at this big age working to make amends and mend that relationship and just continue to try to build it. I've got a stepson. I've got 2 daughters of my own with my wife, who I had an opportunity to be a father to in the home. And that experience, man, has been probably the most affirming experience that I've had since I've been alive, man. I'm honored to be all of their dads. And as this holiday approaches, man, I just want to extend appreciation to all the fathers out there who are doing the best that you can with what you have. Keep doing it, man. There's no perfect father, only perfect effort, man. Keep trying your best for your kids and be the best person that you can be, the best man that you can be for your kids. And at the end of it all, you will see that nothing is more worth your time.
I would echo those sentiments. I had gotten into this habit when I would meet elders, whether they were part of my lineage or just elders and elders in my wife's family, elders and just a lot of my friends' families, and I would ask them. I was like, I would ask them, what's the most remarkable thing that you've ever seen, and then it's it started out, that question. I started asking that question initially because I wanted to see if people would give me some insights about some of the historical markers that we know have occurred. And so, like nobody ever said, Malcolm. Nobody ever said Dr. King. Nobody ever said Megan. Nobody ever said any of that. All these elders that I would ask, and even my own dad, when I asked him, they all said, "My children."
Right.
When I asked them what was the most remarkable thing they had ever seen, they said, "My children." Every last one of them. So then at the point, I quit asking thinking I was going to get one of these historical markers. I was asking because I wanted to hear about the remarkable children. And I just want, and I wanted to hear them, speak on, what it was about their children and grandchildren that was so remarkable and had them so proud, right? And so I was in that space just long enough for my own children to be hitting home runs. And once that starts, then it all makes sense, right? So once your children go through their process, and not that you're not proud of them as children, under your roof and things of that nature, but once you start to see that adult life unfold and the discipline and the focus and and the returns, it is just awesome. And so just not even just proud to be a father, of course, proud to be a father to my children, because I think they're pretty awesome. And then also to that piece that you were saying in terms of each of our commitment to the community, I love that too, right? And I find pride in a lot of the young folks that whose lives I've been a part of, and a lot of times, even those that I don't even necessarily know and have not directly or indirectly impacted, but just to know that, they are, just, thriving and succeeding. I just think it's a pretty awesome thing.
Right. Exactly right. Larry Fields, I know you had some thoughts on the subject.
Yeah, well, first of all, I had what I think was I thought he was a perfect father. No, he was excellent. But I think that I had a father that just phenomenal. Believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Celebrated for me like, he, any accomplishment, like he had made that accomplishment on his own. So I never will be able to have the moniker of being a self-made man, because my father was a sheet metalist and riveter for Boeing. Every time you see the F-15, that nose, he has a couple patents on that nose. He was a journeyman when he ended. So he literally shaped steel with his hands. And that's who raised me. He was a young father. He, roughly 23 years old. My mother was 20 when I was born. My mother and I are 20 years and 1 month apart. He was very young. They got married. I was born shortly after they were married. Let me just put it like that. But he was such a hands-on, and we didn't have a lot of money. But when I was growing up, my younger siblings enjoyed him maturing in his profession, and they had way more resources than we did when I was growing up. But in the summertime, he would leave for work. I'd get on my bike, and I would meet him back home every day, and we played basketball until it was time to go to bed. Eat dinner, but that's the, and he had a business that I helped him run, several businesses. He always had a side hustle. So, that to me was the commitment. Yet the only time I had ever seen him vulnerable was when my mother was ill, or when he talked about his father that I never met. He
Mm.
never. So this notion that you have to have a father to be an incredible father is a falsehood. I asked those same guys, that say they never had a father that aren't great fathers. Well, do you have a car? Yeah. Like, did you learn how to take care of your car? Yeah. Well, okay. Well, you can't learn how to take care of a child. Those are the same guys that say that the mother of the child won't allow them to see the child. And I asked those same guys, well, I mean, if she owed you, $1 million, would you get your money? If she owed you, okay, and then I go all the way down. So if she owes you 5,000, would you get your money? Yeah. Well, how? I go to court. I do whatever I had to do to get my money. Well, that's what you need to do to see your child and be in your child's life.
Yeah, that's a whole show, man. We really need to do that show, talking about fatherhood and the role that fathers play in our children's lives and the impact of the absence of fathers in some of our kids' lives, man.
And brother, it is a real thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Aeneas Williams wrote a book, and in that book, there's a section where he said he and another player, I forget who the player is. This is when they played for the St. Louis Rams.
Mm-hmm.
He said, Aeneas told him, I can tell you everyone in this locker room that grew up without a father. And he physically went to each other and said, and to all these guys, it was about 25 of them. Out of the 25, he only missed 2. And so the other player asked him, well, how could you identify that? He's like, it's very easy. All those guys have unexplainable anger.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And displaced anger. Angry at shit that you
all
don't
the
even need to
time.
be angry at. Yeah.
All the time. And so, that is, it's a real thing. Having a father and a mother that, they create a safety net that you will never have to use and understand emotionally when they love you. Now, there's some times where it's better to have them out of the house, and I'm sure there are moments when my children don't want to hear what I have to say, but I'm talking about abuse and so forth. So,
but Larry, that space you just described, the support, that unconditional, is the foundation in which children begin their initial growth, and everything follows from that, man. If you have that at the start, you have every opportunity to become everything that is possible for you to be. If you know that I'm loved, I'm supported, I'm protected unconditionally, then you can start to move in the directions that life takes you and go 100 miles an hour, man. And it really makes all the difference, man. Like you said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you cannot do those things in the absence of, but if you have them, you're almost sure to be the best that you can be.
And I don't want to delve too far into Dr. Alexander's world, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a real thing.
Yeah, it is a real thing. We got about a minute left, brothers. Dr. Alexander, I think I'm gonna give you the last word this week, man. Take us home.
Happy Father's Day to, all the men out there. Enjoy your day. Get some rest. Get some love and show some love. And just, revel in your work.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Alexander. On behalf of Level Set, everybody, happy Father's Day. We'll see you next week.
Great conversation, brothers.
Yeah, man.